In a quiet little town where everyone knew each other's business, there was a garage that stood out from the rest. It wasn't fancy or modern like some of the newer shops in the city. It was old, weathered, and smelled faintly of oil and rubber. The sign above the door read, Kane's Auto Repair, though most people just called it Marcus's place. Marcus Kane was the owner, a man with calloused hands, grease-streaked overalls, and a reputation for being both brilliant and grumpy. He could fix anything with an engine, but his sharp tongue often made customers think twice about asking too many questions. On this particular afternoon, Marcus was deep into repairing an old Chevy truck that had seen better days. Its engine sputtered and coughed like it was gasping for air, and its owner had practically begged Marcus to breathe new life into it. With tools scattered around him and sweat dripping down his face, Marcus muttered under his breath about how no one took care of their vehicles anymore. Just as he reached for a wrench, he heard the faint sound of footsteps behind him. Turning around, he saw someone standing near the entrance of the garage. At first glance, it was hard to tell who, or what, they were. All Marcus could see was a lanky figure holding onto a toolbox that looked far too heavy for them. As they stepped closer, the sunlight streaming through the open garage door revealed a teenage girl, probably no older than 16 or 17. Her hair was tied back in a messy ponytail, her jeans were smudged with dirt, and she wore a determined look on her face. "Well?" Marcus barked, not bothering to hide his irritation. "What do you want?" The girl didn't flinch. Instead, she walked right up to him, dragging the toolbox along the concrete floor with a loud scrape. "I'm here to learn," she said firmly, setting the toolbox down beside him. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Learn? From me? Kid, I don't have time to babysit." "I'm not asking you to teach me," she replied, crossing her arms. "I already know how to work on cars. I just need somewhere to practice." Marcus snorted. "Sure you do. And, I suppose you're going to tell me next that you built a rocket ship in your backyard?" For a moment, the girl looked annoyed, but then she smirked. "Nope. But I did rebuild my mom's sedan last summer when the transmission went out. Took me 3 weeks, but it runs fine now." Marcus stared at her, trying to decide if she was serious or just bluffing. Most teenagers these days couldn't even change a tire without watching a tutorial online, let alone tackle something as complicated as a transmission. Still, there was something about the way she carried herself, confident yet respectful, that made him curious. "All right, hotshot," Marcus finally said, leaning against the hood of the Chevy. "If you're so good, why don't you show me? Fix this piece of junk while I watch." The girl hesitated for a split second, then nodded. "Fine. But if I fix it, you owe me lunch." Marcus laughed. "Deal. But don't come crying to me when you can't figure it out." With that, the girl rolled up her sleeves, grabbed a pair of gloves from her toolbox, and got to work. She started by popping the hood and inspecting the engine, her eyes scanning every inch of it like a detective searching for clues. Marcus watched silently, arms crossed, waiting for her to mess up. But instead of fumbling or guessing, she moved with surprising confidence. She checked the oil level, examined the spark plugs, and listened carefully to the engine's uneven rumble. After a few minutes, she turned to Marcus. "Sounds like the timing belt is off. Plus, the carburetor needs cleaning." Marcus blinked. Those were exactly the issues he'd identified earlier. He hadn't told anyone, not even the truck's owner. How could this kid possibly know? Without waiting for a response, she dug into the engine, pulling out parts and laying them neatly on a tarp. Marcus noticed how methodical she was, how she double-checked everything before making a move. She worked quickly but carefully, her movements precise and deliberate. Every tool she picked up seemed to fit perfectly in her hand, as if she'd been using them her entire life. As the hours passed, Marcus found himself growing more and more impressed, and slightly uneasy. This wasn't just beginner's luck. This girl really knew what she was doing. She replaced the timing belt, cleaned the carburetor, and adjusted the fuel injectors with ease. By the time she tightened the final bolt and closed the hood, the sun had dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the garage. Stepping back, she wiped her hands on a rag and looked at Marcus expectantly. "Well, want to hear it run?" Marcus nodded, still unable to believe what he'd just witnessed. He climbed into the driver's seat and turned the key. The engine roared to life, smooth and steady, sounding better than it had in years. For a moment, all he could do was sit there, stunned. When he finally climbed out of the truck, the girl was standing nearby, arms crossed and a triumphant grin on her face. "So," she said, "where are we going for lunch?" Marcus shook his head, chuckling despite himself. "All right, kid, you earned it. But before we go, I gotta ask, where'd you learn all this?" The girl's smile faltered slightly, and for the first time, she looked unsure. "My dad taught me," she said quietly. "He used to fix cars for a living until he passed away last year." The words hung in the air between them, heavy and unexpected. Marcus felt a lump form in his throat. He remembered hearing about her father, a talented mechanic who had once been well respected in the community. They'd had their differences back then, fierce competitors vying for the same customers, but Marcus had always respected the man's skill. Now seeing his daughter standing there carrying on his legacy filled him with a mix of pride and regret. "Your dad," Marcus began, his voice softer than usual. "He was good, real good, and it looks like he passed that gift on to you." The girl smiled again, though this time it was tinged with sadness. "Thanks, that means a lot." And with that, the two of them headed off to grab lunch, neither of them realizing that this chance encounter would change both of their lives forever. The next morning, Marcus woke up with a strange feeling in his chest. It wasn't guilt exactly, but it was close. Something nagging at the edges of his mind that he couldn't quite shake off. He replayed the events of the previous day over and over again in his head. The teenage girl walking into his garage like she owned the place, her confident hands moving deftly under the hood of that old Chevy truck. And finally, the moment when she revealed who had taught her everything she knew. Her name was Lily Carter. She was just a kid, really, but there was something about her that reminded him of himself when he was younger, eager, determined, and unafraid to get her hands dirty. But more than anything, she reminded him of someone else too, her father, Jack Carter. Jack had been one of the best mechanics Marcus had ever known, a man whose reputation rivaled even Marcus's own. They'd both started their businesses around the same time, competing for customers in a small town where loyalty ran deep. Their rivalry had been fierce, often bordering on bitter, but underneath it all, Marcus had always respected Jack's skill. That respect had turned sour after Jack fell ill. Cancer. Sudden and aggressive, it robbed him of his strength and eventually his life. Marcus had heard through the grapevine how hard it hit Jack's family, his wife struggling to make ends meet, his daughter left without a father. At the time, Marcus told himself there was nothing he could do. He didn't have the words to comfort grieving people, nor did he feel comfortable inserting himself into their lives. So he stayed away, pretending not to notice when Lily occasionally passed by the garage on her way home from school. But now, seeing her standing there yesterday, fixing engines with the same precision and care her father once had, made Marcus realize how wrong he'd been. Jack's legacy hadn't disappeared with him. It lived on through Lily. And instead of honoring that legacy, Marcus had ignored it. Over the next few days, Lily kept coming back to the garage. At first, Marcus tried to brush her off, telling her he didn't need any help, but she persisted, showing up every afternoon with her toolbox slung over her shoulder and a stubborn glint in her eye. "I'm here to learn," she'd say, plopping herself down beside whatever project Marcus happened to be working on, whether you like it or not. At first, Marcus found her persistence annoying. Who was this kid to barge into his space and demand attention? But as the days went by, he began to see her differently. She wasn't just some random teenager looking for something to do. She was passionate, driven, and incredibly talented. Watching her work was like watching a younger version of Jack, except with her own unique flair. She approached problems methodically, asking questions when she needed clarification and experimenting with solutions until she got it right. One afternoon, while they were working on a particularly tricky repair job, a busted transmission in an old sedan, Marcus decided to test her knowledge. "All right, kid," he said, leaning against the car frame. "Tell me what's wrong with this thing." Lily squinted at the engine, tilting her head slightly as she studied it. "Well, based on the noise it makes when you try to shift gears, I'd say the clutch is shot. Probably needs replacing." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Not bad. What else?" She frowned, running her fingers along the various components. The fluid levels are low, which means there might be a leak somewhere. Could be the seals. Oh, and the torque converter feels loose. It's probably worn out." Marcus stared at her, momentarily speechless. Not only had she diagnosed the problem correctly, but she'd also identified multiple issues that he hadn't even noticed yet. "You're full of surprises, aren't you?" he muttered, half impressed and half irritated. Lily grinned, clearly pleased with herself. "Told you I know my stuff." As they worked side by side, Marcus found himself opening up to her in ways he never expected. They talked about cars, of course, their favorite models, the quirks of different engines, and the tricks of the trade. But they also talked about other things. Like her dad. "He used to let me sit in the garage with him when I was little," Lily said one day, tightening a bolt with practiced ease. "I'd bring a book or draw pictures while he worked. Sometimes he'd explain what he was doing, breaking it down step by step so I could understand. Other times he'd just hand me a wrench and tell me to figure it out myself." Marcus chuckled. "Sounds like Jack. Always believed in teaching by example." "Yeah," Lily agreed, her voice softening. "He wanted me to be independent, to know I could handle anything life threw at me. After he got sick, though, things changed. I had to step up, take care of things around the house. That's when I really started learning about cars. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to." Marcus nodded slowly, understanding the weight of her words. Losing a parent was hard enough, but having to grow up faster than you should? That was a burden no child deserved to carry. And yet here she was, handling it with grace and determination. "You've done good, kid," Marcus said gruffly, patting her on the shoulder. "Your dad would be proud." Lily smiled, but there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. "Thanks. That means a lot coming from you." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the garage floor, Marcus realized something important. This wasn't just about fixing cars anymore, it was about fixing relationships, about bridging gaps that had been left wide open for far too long. For years he'd carried the guilt of letting his rivalry with Jack overshadow their mutual respect. Now, through Lily, he had a chance to make amends, not just to her, but to her father's memory as well. And maybe, just maybe, he could teach her a thing or two along the way. As the weeks went by, Marcus and Lily fell into a rhythm that felt almost natural, like they had been working together for years. Every afternoon she would show up at the garage with her toolbox in tow, ready to dive into whatever project Marcus was tackling. Sometimes it was a simple oil change or brake pad replacement. Other times it was something more complex, like rebuilding an engine or diagnosing a mysterious electrical issue. No matter the task, Lily approached it with the same enthusiasm and determination that had first caught Marcus's attention. What surprised Marcus most was how much he enjoyed having her around. At first he had thought of her as a nuisance, a curious teenager who wouldn't leave him alone. But now he found himself looking forward to their conversations, the way she asked thoughtful questions and challenged his assumptions. She wasn't afraid to speak her mind, even when it meant disagreeing with him, and that honesty was refreshing. It reminded him of himself when he was younger, before life had worn down his edges and made him gruff and guarded. One evening, after closing up the garage, Marcus decided it was time to dig deeper. He had heard enough snippets about Lily's father over the past few weeks to piece together a picture of the man, but he wanted to know more. Not just for his own sake, but because he sensed that Lily needed someone to listen, to truly hear her stories without judgment. "Hey," Marcus called out as Lily was packing up her tools. "You got a minute?" She glanced up, surprised. "Sure." What's up? Marcus gestured toward the makeshift seating area at the back of the garage, a couple of overturned crates and a cooler filled with soda cans. Let's sit for a bit. Lily hesitated, then nodded. She grabbed a can of soda and joined him, perching awkwardly on one of the crates. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The only sounds were the distant hum of traffic and the occasional chirp of crickets outside. So, Marcus began, clearing his throat. Tell me more about your dad. What was he like? A small smile tugged at the corners of Lily's lips. He was amazing, she said softly. Not perfect, of course. He could be stubborn sometimes, and he worked long hours, which meant we didn't always spend as much time together as I wanted. But when he was home, he made every second count. Marcus nodded, encouraging her to continue. He loved cars, obviously, Lily went on. But it wasn't just about fixing them. It was about understanding them, figuring out what made them tick. He used to say that cars were like people, each one unique, with its own personality and quirks. You couldn't force them to do what you wanted, you had to work with them. Marcus chuckled. Sounds like something Jack would say. It is, Lily confirmed, her smile widening. He taught me to respect machines, to treat them like partners instead of obstacles. And he never let me give up, no matter how frustrated I got. If I couldn't figure something out, he'd tell me to walk away for a while, clear my head, and come back later with fresh eyes. That's good advice, Marcus admitted. I should have done that more often myself. Lily tilted her head, studying him curiously. Did you ever meet my dad, like before he got sick? Marcus hesitated, debating how much to share. Finally, he sighed and leaned back against the wall. Yeah, I met him. We weren't exactly friends, though. More. Yeah, I met him. We weren't exactly friends, though, more like rivals. Marcus admitted, his voice tinged with regret. He glanced at Lily, gauging her reaction. Her expression remained neutral, but there was a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. Rivals? She asked, leaning forward slightly. What do you mean? Marcus sighed, rubbing the back of his neck as he searched for the right words. Back when your dad first opened his shop, we were both trying to make a name for ourselves in this town. It's not a big place, so competition was stiff. People only had so much money to spend on repairs, and they usually stuck with whoever they trusted. Your dad, well, he had a way with people. He could charm anyone into believing he was the best mechanic around, and honestly, he probably was. Lily smirked at that, clearly proud of her father's reputation. So what happened? Why didn't you guys get along? It wasn't personal, at least not at first, Marcus explained. We just clashed. He had his methods and I had mine. We'd undercut each other's prices, try to win over the same customers. Sometimes it got ugly. There were arguments, accusations, stuff neither of us should have said. Lily frowned, processing this new information. But my dad never mentioned any of that. He always talked about how talented you were, how much he respected your work. Marcus felt a lump form in his throat. The words hit him harder than he expected. He said that? She nodded. All the time. He used to tell me stories about some of the crazy fixes you pulled off. Like that time you rebuilt an engine from scratch using parts from 3 different cars. He called you a genius. For a moment, Marcus couldn't speak. He stared down at his hands, calloused and grease-stained, remembering all the times he'd let his pride get in the way of acknowledging Jack's skill. They had been so focused on outdoing each other that they'd forgotten what really mattered. The love of cars, the joy of solving problems, and the satisfaction of doing honest work. I wish I'd known, Marcus murmured. Maybe things would have been different if I hadn't been so stubborn. Lily placed a reassuring hand on his arm. It's okay. You're here now, aren't you? That's what counts. Her words struck a chord deep within him. She was right. He couldn't change the past, but he could make amends in the present. And maybe, just maybe, he could honor Jack's memory by passing on everything he knew to Lily. Over the next few weeks, their partnership grew stronger. Marcus began teaching Lily advanced techniques he'd picked up over decades of experience. From welding and fabricating custom parts to diagnosing complex electrical systems, He shared every trick of the trade. In return, Lily brought fresh perspectives and innovative ideas that often surprised him. One day, while working on a vintage Mustang that had been sitting in the garage for months, Lily suggested something bold. "What if we restore it completely?" she asked, running her fingers along the car's rusted frame. "Not just fix it up, but bring it back to life. Make it look like it did the day it rolled off the assembly line." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "That's a lot of work. Are you sure you're ready for something like that?" Lily grinned confidently. "I wouldn't have suggested it if I wasn't." Something about her determination reminded Marcus of himself when he was younger, eager to prove he could take on the world. He nodded slowly. "All right, kid. Let's do it. But don't say I didn't warn you, it's going to be tough." The project quickly became their shared obsession. They spent countless hours researching original specifications, sourcing rare parts, and painstakingly restoring every inch of the car. Lily took charge of sanding down the bodywork, meticulously removing layers of paint and rust until the metal gleamed beneath. Marcus handled the mechanical side, rebuilding the engine and suspension to ensure the car would run smoothly once it was finished. As they worked, word spread through the town about the unlikely duo turning a dilapidated Mustang into a masterpiece. Customers who came to the garage for routine repairs couldn't help but stop and admire their progress. Some even offered to help, donating old magazines or memorabilia from the era to inspire the restoration. Through it all, Marcus found himself growing closer to Lily, not just as a mentor but as a friend. They laughed together, argued over minor details, and celebrated small victories along the way. For the first time in years, Marcus felt a sense of purpose beyond simply fixing cars. He was building something meaningful, not just with metal and machinery, but with trust and mutual respect. By the time the Mustang was finally complete, it looked like it had stepped straight out of a dream. Its candy apple red paint sparkled under the sunlight, and its chrome accents gleamed like mirrors. When they fired up the engine for the first time, the deep rumble sent shivers down their spines. Standing beside the car, Marcus draped an arm around Lily's shoulders. "You did good, kid. Real good." Lily beamed with pride, tears glistening in her eyes. "We did good." In that moment, Marcus realized something profound. This wasn't just about restoring a car. It was about restoring connections. Between people, between generations, and between past and future. Through Lily, he had found a way to heal old wounds and keep Jack's legacy alive. And through Marcus, Lily had discovered a path forward, one that honored her father's memory while forging her own identity. As they stood there, admiring their handiwork, Marcus made a silent promise to himself. He would continue mentoring Lily, helping her grow into the brilliant mechanic he knew she could become. Together, they would carry on the tradition of craftsmanship and passion that defined their shared love for cars. Word of the restored Mustang spread quickly through the small town, drawing attention from all corners. People who hadn't set foot in Marcus's garage in years suddenly showed up, eager to catch a glimpse of the gleaming vintage car. Some came out of curiosity, others out of nostalgia, but everyone left impressed by the craftsmanship and dedication that had gone into bringing it back to life. The buzz grew so intense that Marcus and Lily decided to host an open house, a chance for the community to see their work up close and celebrate not just the Mustang, but the spirit of restoration that had fueled their partnership. The day of the event arrived with clear skies and warm sunshine, perfect weather for showing off classic cars. Marcus spent the morning tidying up the garage, sweeping floors and arranging tools neatly on shelves. Meanwhile, Lily polished the Mustang one last time, making sure every detail was flawless. By noon, the parking lot outside was packed with visitors, friends, neighbors, customers, and even a few local reporters curious about the story behind the unlikely duo. As guests wandered through the garage, admiring not only the Mustang, but also the other projects Marcus and Lily had worked on together, Marcus found himself standing beside Lily near the entrance. She looked nervous, tugging at the hem of her shirt as she scanned the crowd. "You okay?" he asked softly. She nodded, though her fingers still fidgeted. "Yeah, just, I didn't expect this many people. Marcus chuckled. Well, get used to it. This is what happens when you do great work. Lily smiled faintly, but her eyes betrayed a hint of uncertainty. Marcus understood why. For all her confidence under the hood of a car, she wasn't used to being in the spotlight. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. Hey, you've got nothing to worry about. These people are here because they're proud of you. Of us. Her shoulders relaxed slightly and she gave him a grateful look. Thanks, Marcus. Throughout the afternoon, Marcus and Lily took turns answering questions from visitors. Many were fascinated by the technical aspects of the restoration. The painstaking process of sanding rust off the frame, sourcing original parts, and calibrating the engine to perfection. Others were more interested in the personal side of things, how a gruff old mechanic and a teenage girl had come together to create something so extraordinary. One man, an elderly gentleman who had owned a similar Mustang decades ago, approached them with tears in his eyes. This takes me back, he said, running his hand gently along the car's smooth surface. I never thought I'd see another one like mine again. You two have done something truly special. Lily beamed at the compliment, while Marcus simply nodded, humbled by the man's words. It wasn't just about the car. It was about preserving memories, honoring history, and creating connections that transcended generations. Later, during a brief lull in the crowd, Marcus pulled Lily aside. There's something I need to say, he began, his tone serious. When your dad passed away, I didn't know how to handle it. We weren't friends, but we respected each other's skills. Losing him felt like losing part of the town's soul, you know? And instead of reaching out to you, to your family, I stayed away. That was wrong of me. Lily blinked, surprised by the sudden confession. Marcus, no. Let me finish. He interrupted gently. What I'm trying to say is I'm sorry for everything, for letting our rivalry get in the way of acknowledging how talented Jack was, for not being there for you when you needed someone. But mostly, I'm sorry for wasting so much time. Tears welled up in Lily's eyes, but she didn't try to hide them. Instead, she reached out and hugged him tightly. Thank you, she whispered. That means more than you know. When she finally pulled back, her smile was radiant. But don't think this makes you off the hook for teaching me everything you know. Deal? Marcus laughed, the sound echoing warmly through the garage. Deal. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting golden light across the gathering, Marcus stepped onto a makeshift platform to address the crowd. Beside him stood Lily, clutching a microphone nervously. The chatter quieted as everyone turned their attention to them. First off, Marcus began, his deep voice carrying easily over the crowd. Thank you all for coming today. This event wouldn't have been possible without the hard work of someone very special. He gestured toward Lily, who blushed furiously but managed to wave shyly at the audience. She's not just my apprentice, Marcus continued. She's proof that passion and skill can overcome any obstacle. Her dad taught her well, and I'm honored to carry on that legacy with her. Together, we've brought this Mustang back to life. But more importantly, we've reminded ourselves, and hopefully all of you, that it's never too late to learn, grow, or make amends. The crowd erupted into applause, cheering loudly for both Marcus and Lily. When the noise finally died down, Lily stepped forward, her voice trembling but steady. Thank you all for supporting us, she said. And thank you, Marcus, for believing in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. The evening ended with laughter, music, and shared stories, the kind of gathering that brought a community closer together. As the last guest departed and the garage grew quiet once more, Marcus and Lily stood side by side, looking at the Mustang bathed in the soft glow of string lights. You know, Marcus said after a long pause, your dad would have loved this. Lily nodded, her heart full. Yeah, he really would have. In that moment, surrounded by the fruits of their labor and the echoes of celebration, they both knew they had accomplished something far greater than restoring a car. They had built a bond rooted in respect, trust, and mutual admiration, a partnership that would continue to thrive for years to come. As they locked up the garage and headed home, Marcus couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of purpose. Life had thrown its challenges at him, but through Lily, he had found a way to honor the past while embracing the future. And for the first time in a long time, he felt truly at peace.